Imagine buying a new launch and overnight it drops 400k in value. This is what happened to some of the buyers at Cuscaden Reserve. The biggest risk of buying a new launch is if the developer later on drops the price for your neighboring units, which instantly brings down your value. But what if I told you there is a way to know if this is going to happen so you can avoid those launches altogether? Now in this video, I'll share with you the signs to look out for so you can better protect yourselves and your property. Throw back to 2020 to 2022, Cuscaden Reserve, which is located in Orchard, was selling at average highs of 3,625 per square foot all the way to 3,830. Now fast forward to this year, just a few months ago, the developers announced that they'll be relaunching the remaining units for as low as 2,900 per square foot. That is about a 20% drop. And overnight, earlier buyers saw their value drop as neighbors just one floor below them bought for 400k cheaper. But how do we determine if this is going to happen for a project? To know this, you need to know which phase a project is in. So developers, very much like resale sellers, have two objectives, which is to break even and make a profit. Except their risk lies in hundreds of units versus just one. So usually they'll spread this risk across 3 phases, and depending on which phase they are in, they'll behave differently. Phase 1's objective is usually to clear stocks first, and at this point we'll see very minimal to no price increase. As they move on to Phase 2, this is where we'll see price increase more depending on how Phase 1 has done. And in Phase 3, this is when the most drastic price increase usually happens as developers aim to make the most profit margin here. Now every project will go through all 3 phases, but the timeline can look very different. So for some to move from Phase 1 to Phase 2 can be as long as 1 to 2 years, whereas others as fast as within a day. Now how fast they move depends on 2 factors, which is the volume of units moving per month as well as the number of units they need to sell before TOP. Let's look at our first example, Key Residence. Now Key is a large development of 660 units. Now in Phase 1, we can see the average volume transacted per month is about 55 units including launch day. So in Phase 1, they hadn't yet sold 50% of their units and didn't have the confidence to increase price yet. So they remain at a minimum range for about 8 months. As they move to Phase 2, by this point they had sold 67% of their units and had more confidence to increase price. However, volume also dropped at this point, so in order to mitigate risk, they increased at a slower pace. Now by Phase 3, they had sold most of their unit and only had 19% left, but still had 2 years till their TOP. So this means they only need to sell about 5 units per month. So if we look back at the past volume for each month, this can be easily attainable, which is why they had a lot of confidence at this point and increased the price drastically. Now the difference between the highest to lowest was about 595 PSF. Let's look at another example, Treasures at Tampines, which has a whopping 2,203 units. Now put yourselves in their shoes. If you have that many units to sell, are you going to price very high early on? Let's take a look. So for their Phase 1, we can see they remain there for an even longer period of time, 1.5 years, before they eventually moved to Phase 2 after selling a large number of units. Now in Phase 2, they increased price, and lastly, when they moved to Phase 3, there was a steep increase in price. Now this is a pattern we commonly see with mega developments that have more units to clear. Knowing which phase a development is in also allows you to spot opportunities among the units. Take for example, these 3 bedrooms at Treasures. Now the first was bought in Phase 1, facing the pool at 1,319 per square foot. The second was bought in Phase 2, also facing the pool at 1,394 per square foot. And the last was bought in Phase 3, facing the bin center, a less desirable facing, for 1,584 per square foot. Now which unit do you think will be easier to sell in the future? In this case, you can see that the first 2 units that were bought in Phase 1 and 2 were able to secure a better view for a lower price by entering in the right phase. While it may seem that Phase 3 is the riskiest to enter, in the case of Cuscaden Reserve, it was actually neither. They had attained their CSC, Certificate of Statutory Completion, which meant the project had been completed and developer was free from any loan and legal obligations that might affect their pricing. So at this point, they were free to command any price they wanted. But if you're trying to determine if a particular launch is in a particular phase, keep this formula in mind. The average volume of units transacting transacting per month divided by the number of units left before TOP to be sold. So take for example the Botany, which is now 96% sold. They were transacting 20 to 25 units on average per month. There are now 14 units left, so it would be impossible for the developer to drop the price at this point. Now that's all for today. If you're still unsure if a particular development is safe, feel free to reach out to me and I'll catch you all next time.